Greta Garbo, the enigmatic Swedish actress of Hollywood's golden age, captivated audiences with her haunting beauty and mysterious presence. Rising to fame in the silent film era and seamlessly transitioning to talkies, Garbo became one of MGM's most prized stars. Films like Anna Karenina, 1935, and Camille, 1936, solidified her status as a cinematic icon. However, the pressures of fame, the intrusive Hollywood lifestyle, and the industry's ever-changing nature took a toll on her. In 1941, at the peak of her career, Garbo made a shocking decision. She walked away from Hollywood, never to return. Unlike many stars who stage comebacks, she remained steadfast in her retirement. She moved to New York but often traveled to Europe, choosing a life of privacy over the spotlight. Paparazzi occasionally captured glimpses of her wandering the streets, yet she refused interviews and film offers for decades. The industry speculated about her reasons: disillusionment, loneliness, or simply a desire for peace. Whatever the cause, Garbo's departure added to her legend. She remains a symbol of Hollywood's lost mystique, proving that even the brightest stars can choose to fade into obscurity rather than burn out under the limelight. Marlene Dietrich, the German-born actress and singer, was a force to be reckoned with during Hollywood's golden age. With her sultry voice, androgynous style, and captivating performances in films like Morocco, 1930, and The Blue Angel, 1930, she became an international sensation. However, Dietrich was never one to conform, whether in fashion, politics, or career choices. When Hollywood tried to mold her into another glamorous starlet, she rebelled, embracing her unique identity and even rejecting roles that didn't align with her principles. As World War II unfolded, Dietrich became an outspoken critic of Nazi Germany, renouncing her homeland and performing for Allied troops on the front lines. Her patriotism toward her adopted country, the U.S., won her admiration but also made her a target of controversy. By the 1950s and 60s, as Hollywood shifted toward a new generation of stars, Dietrich found fewer opportunities. Rather than fade into obscurity, she reinvented herself as a cabaret performer, dazzling audiences in Europe with her signature songs and commanding stage presence. By the 1970s, Dietrich had completely withdrawn from public life, settling in Paris. She refused interviews and lived in near seclusion until her death in 1992. Hollywood may have been her stepping stone, but Marlene Dietrich left on her own terms, proving she was always bigger than the industry itself. Louise Rayner was once one of Hollywood's brightest stars, making history as the first actor to win back-to-back Academy Awards for The Great Ziegfeld, 1936, and The Good Earth, 1937. With her delicate beauty and deeply emotional performances, she was hailed as the next great leading lady. However, Hollywood's golden promise soon turned into disillusionment. Rayner found herself trapped in the rigid studio system, where MGM controlled every aspect of her career. She despised the superficiality of fame and felt that winning 2 Oscars so early had done more harm than good. Producers stopped offering her serious roles, expecting her to repeat past successes. Frustrated with the lack of artistic freedom, she clashed with studio executives, particularly the powerful Louis B. Mayer. By 1940, just a few years after her meteoric rise, she left Hollywood behind, seeking more meaningful work and a life beyond the industry's control. She moved to Europe, where she pursued theater and occasional film roles, but never sought to reclaim her Hollywood stardom. Living a quiet life in London, she outlived most of her contemporaries, reaching the remarkable age of 104. Rayner's departure from Hollywood was not one of failure, but of choice, proving that true success isn't just about staying in the spotlight. Josephine Baker was more than just a performer. She was a trailblazer, a spy, and a civil rights activist. Born into poverty in St. Louis, she rose to fame in the 1920s as a jazz-age sensation, captivating audiences with her electrifying dance performances and fearless charisma. However, despite her success, America remained a hostile place for a black woman in entertainment. Facing relentless racism and segregation, Baker sought a new home, one where she could be celebrated without prejudice. She found that home in France. Paris embraced her like a queen, and she became one of the most famous entertainers in Europe. When World War II erupted, Baker didn't just perform, she worked as a spy for the French resistance, smuggling messages in sheet music and using her influence to gather intelligence. After the war, she continued her fight for justice, refusing to perform in segregated venues in the U.S. and actively supporting the civil rights movement. Despite America's eventual recognition of her contributions, Baker never fully returned. She spent her later years in France, raising her multiracial rainbow tribe of adopted children. In the end, she didn't just flee America, she conquered the world on her own terms, leaving behind a legacy of courage, artistry, and activism. Gloria Swanson was the epitome of 1920s Hollywood glamour. As a silent film superstar, she dazzled audiences in films like Male and Female, 1919, and Sadie Thompson, 1928. Her lavish lifestyle, complete with designer gowns and affairs with aristocrats, made her a true icon of the era. But when talkies took over, Swanson, like many silent stars, struggled to maintain her dominance. She attempted to transition but found herself at odds with the changing industry. Rather than fight for roles that no longer suited her, Swanson took control of her own destiny. She turned to independent filmmaking, producing Queen Kelly, 1929, an ambitious project that flopped financially but proved her fearless spirit. By the 1940s, she had largely stepped away from Hollywood, focusing on business ventures and even health advocacy. Then came Sunset Boulevard, 1950, a role that mirrored her own life. Playing Norma Desmond, a forgotten silent film star longing for her past glory, Swanson delivered one of the most haunting performances in cinema history. The film revived her fame, but she didn't cling to Hollywood. She continued living on her own terms, proving that her departure was never a fall from grace. It was a conscious choice to evolve beyond the industry. Tippi Hedren seemed destined for Hollywood greatness. Handpicked by Alfred Hitchcock to star in The Birds, 1963, and Marnie, 1964, she quickly became a household name. With her striking beauty and icy charm, she was poised to be the next Grace Kelly. But behind the scenes, her relationship with Hitchcock turned toxic. He obsessively controlled her career, dictating everything from her roles to her personal life. When she rejected his advances, he retaliated, sabotaging her Hollywood future by ensuring she wouldn't get work. Rather than submit to the industry's cruelty, Hedren walked away. She refused to let her career be defined by one man's influence. While she continued acting in smaller roles, her passion shifted toward animal activism. She founded the Shambhala Preserve, a sanctuary for big cats, and spent decades fighting for wildlife protection. Her daughter, Melanie Griffith, went on to become a Hollywood star, but Hedren never regretted her decision to leave the industry's toxic power dynamics behind. Today, Tippi Hedren is remembered not just as a Hitchcock muse, but as a woman who reclaimed her autonomy. She didn't just flee. Ramon Novarro was one of Hollywood's first Latin heartthrobs, rising to fame during the silent film era with his dashing looks and charismatic performances. Best known for Ben-Hur, A Tale of the Christ, 1925, he was often compared to Rudolph Valentino, another exoticized romantic lead. When talkies arrived, Novarro initially made a successful transition, but soon, Hollywood's changing tastes and his refusal to conform to the industry's demands led to a decline in major roles. Behind the scenes, Novarro struggled with the pressures of fame, particularly as a closeted gay man in an industry that demanded secrecy. While the public saw him as a Latin lover, he lived in fear of exposure, knowing that Hollywood was not ready to accept his true identity. As the 1930s and 1940s progressed, leading roles dried up, and rather than fight for a place in an industry that had moved on, Novarro stepped back from Hollywood, focusing on his private life. Though he continued acting in smaller projects, he largely lived in quiet seclusion, never seeking a comeback. Tragically, his life ended in a brutal murder in 1968, a grim reminder of the dark side of fame. Yet, Novarro remains an enduring figure of Hollywood's silent era, a star who chose to distance himself from an industry that could never fully embrace him. Charlie Chaplin wasn't just a Hollywood star, he was one of the most influential filmmakers in history. With his iconic tramp character, he charmed audiences worldwide in classics like City Lights, 1931, and Modern Times, 1936. But Chaplin wasn't just about comedy. His films carried deep social and political messages, critiquing poverty, capitalism, and war. This outspokenness, combined with his controversial personal life, made him a target in post-war America. During the Red Scare of the 1950s, Chaplin was accused of having communist sympathies. Despite never officially joining the Communist Party, his progressive views and refusal to become a U.S. citizen made him a prime target. In 1952, While on a trip to England for his film Limelight, the U.S. government revoked his re-entry permit, effectively exiling him from Hollywood. Rather than fight, Chaplin chose to settle in Switzerland with his family, turning his back on the country that had once made him a legend. Though he made a brief return to America in 1972 to accept an honorary Oscar, Chaplin never lived there again. His story remains a cautionary tale of how fame and politics can collide, yet his legacy as a cinematic pioneer remains untouchable. Jean Seberg was Hollywood's perfect ingenue, discovered at just 17 for Otto Preminger's St. Joan, 1957. Though her American debut was rocky, she found her true stardom in France, becoming a defining face of the French New Wave with Breathless, 1960. Her effortless cool and pixie-cut charm made her an icon, but behind the scenes, her life was anything but glamorous. Despite her European success, Seberg never entirely left Hollywood, until the FBI forced her to. In the late 1960s, she became an outspoken activist supporting civil rights causes, including the Black Panther Party. J. Edgar Hoover's FBI saw her as a threat, launching a brutal COINTELPRO campaign to ruin her. They spread false rumors, planted fake news about her pregnancy, and wiretapped her calls. The relentless harassment pushed Seberg into deep despair, and she fled to France, seeking refuge from America's political persecution. Though she continued acting, her spirit was broken. Years of surveillance and media attacks took their toll, and in 1979, she was found dead in Paris under mysterious circumstances. Officially ruled a suicide, many believe she was driven to her fate by the relentless targeting of the U.S. government. Seberg's story remains one of Hollywood's darkest tragedies, a star who fled not just fame, but an industry and a country that betrayed her. Erich von Stroheim was one of early Hollywood's most ambitious and controversial filmmakers. An Austrian-born actor and director, he gained fame for his meticulous attention to detail and extravagant productions. His masterpieces, such as Greed, 1924, were groundbreaking in their realism but clashed with the rigid studio system. Stroheim's refusal to compromise made him a legend, but also a liability in Hollywood. Studio executives, frustrated by his perfectionism and ballooning budgets, butchered Greed, cutting it from over 9 hours to just 2. His later films faced similar interference, and by the late 1920s, Hollywood had effectively blacklisted him as a director. Unable to make movies on his own terms, Stroheim turned to acting, often portraying cruel aristocrats and military officers in films like Grand Illusion, 1937, and Sunset Boulevard, 1950, where he ironically played a forgotten director. Disillusioned with Hollywood's treatment, Stroheim left for France, where he found greater artistic respect. He spent his final years in near exile, bitter about the industry that had once hailed him as a genius but later discarded him. Yet, history proved him right. His films are now seen as some of cinema's greatest achievements, a testament to his unrelenting artistic vision. Dolores Del Rio was one of the first Latina actresses to achieve Hollywood stardom. With her striking beauty and elegant presence, she became a major silent film star in the 1920s and successfully transitioned to talkies in the 1930s, starring in films like Flying Down to Rio, 1933, and Madame du Barry, 1934. However, despite her talent, she was often typecast in exotic or decorative roles, never given the depth or respect she deserved. As Hollywood's golden age progressed, new beauty standards and racial biases limited her opportunities. Rather than accept diminishing roles, Del Rio made a bold decision. She left Hollywood in the 1940s and returned to Mexico. There, she became a queen of the Mexican golden age of cinema, starring in critically acclaimed films like Flor Silvestre, 1943, and Maria Candelaria, 1944. She worked with some of the greatest filmmakers of the time, proving that her artistry extended far beyond the constraints of Hollywood. Unlike many who fled Hollywood in decline, Del Rio found even greater success after leaving. She returned to Hollywood occasionally for select roles, but never needed its validation again. Her legacy endures as a pioneering Latina actress who refused to be limited by an industry that never fully appreciated her brilliance. Maximilian Schell was a rare talent, an Austrian-born actor, director, and writer who seamlessly moved between European cinema and Hollywood. He gained international fame with his powerful performance in Judgment at Nuremberg, 1961, which earned him an Academy Award for Best Actor. His intense screen presence and multilingual skills made him one of the most sought-after actors of the 1960s and 1970s, starring in films like The Odessa File, 1974, and Julia, 1977. Despite his Hollywood success, Schell never fully embraced the American film industry. He preferred the creative freedom of European cinema, where he could take on more complex, intellectually challenging roles. Unlike many stars who craved Hollywood fame, Schell saw acting as an art rather than a commercial enterprise. He turned down many mainstream roles in favor of directing and producing independent films, including acclaimed documentaries about historical and philosophical themes. By the 1980s, he had largely distanced himself from Hollywood, only returning occasionally for select projects. He spent his later years in Austria and Switzerland, dedicating himself to theater and music. Leslie Howard was the epitome of British charm and sophistication, best known for his roles in Gone with the Wind, 1939, Pygmalion, 1938, and The Scarlet Pimpernel, 1934. With his refined demeanor and intelligent performances, he became one of Hollywood's most respected leading men. However, despite his fame in America, Howard was never truly comfortable in Hollywood. He disliked the commercialism of the industry and often expressed frustration with the shallow roles he was given. As World War II broke out, Howard felt an increasing duty to his homeland. A passionate patriot, he abandoned Hollywood at the height of his career to support Britain's war effort. He starred in and directed propaganda films, gave radio broadcasts, and even engaged in covert intelligence work. His efforts made him a key figure in British morale, but they also put him in danger. In 1943, while flying from Portugal to England, Howard's plane was shot down by German forces. Many believe he was targeted due to his involvement in anti-Nazi efforts. His death was a tragic loss, but Leslie Howard's decision to leave Hollywood was not about escaping. It was about standing up for what he believed in. His legacy remains that of a true hero, both on and off the screen. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and comment. Also consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell to get notified of our newest videos. Thanks for watching.